Welcome to Hot Topics in International Trade, brought to you by Brewer Law Group and Brewer Consulting Group.
Hi, this is Bob Brewer with Brewer Law Group and Brewer Consulting Group. Once again, I have with me Kerry Wang, Senior Associate Attorney, Brewer Law Group. This is part B that we had told you about in our last podcast. And this one, we want to carry over to valuation and recovery strategies, because this is really important. But in what ways, Kerry, can valuation strategies, and I'm talking like first sale and transfer pricing adjustments, help lower a company's duty exposure?
Thank you, Bob. Yes, valuation is very important. We talked about the classification and the conversion. Valuation is another important prong of the duty calculation. So valuation usually, when we talk about the valuation, under CBP regulation, the valuation follow a set hierarchy. So first of all, you start with the transaction value, which is price actually paid payable, and then transaction value of, say, merchandise, and a deductive value, computed value, and a fallback method. So that's the hierarchy you have to follow. The declared value is very important because the calculation, the duty calculation is based on how much value you declared at the time of entry. As import record, you have to declare the right value, correct value. But what we're talking about here is that how to declare a lower value in a compliant way to further save duties, right? First sale for export. This is a very exciting concept. What it is in a multi-tier transaction, where you can declare an earlier transaction when you actually are not part of that transaction, right? So you're following, which is, for example, there's a middleman. Kerry want to buy a pencil from a manufacturer in China, and Kerry historically has purchased a pencil directly from a middleman. And then Kerry figure out, hey, the price the middleman paying for the manufacturer is significantly lower than what Kerry has been pay the middleman. So hey, I want to declare that value, the first sale between the middleman and the manufacturer. So how can we do that? There were a few requirements. The sale has to be bona fide sale. The bona fide sale is also, is a complex standards. There are a few things CBP like to look at, whether there is a title transfer, whether there is a risk of loss transfer, whether the middleman and manufacturer are indeed acting as a buyer or seller, whether the middleman has control of the goods. They look at a set of things to determine whether there is a bona fide sale. Whether the price is at arm's length, right? Whether this price is fair. When the parties are unrelated, they would likely assume the price is at arm's length. But if, hey, I'm buying this product from my mom's company, they would assume this price is not at arm's length. You have to prove that the price is at arm's length. Another thing is, at the time of export, the goods has to be destined for export to the United States. So that are standards you have to follow when you want to implement the first sale strategy. One thing I want to say this is a very complex concept. You have to take some time to set up. And also CBP, when they look at you're using first sale, they would expect you have a perfect documentation to supporting that strategy.
They're looking for what? Fraud?
Yeah, fraud. And they were just any deviation from the requirements could fail your program.
Yeah.
So that's you can't just implement the first sale. I would say, hey, I want to implement the first sale tomorrow. I'm going to just go ahead and declare that first sale. You have to make sure you do your homework before you start doing that. And transfer pricing adjustments. So what this is usually for those national company. They have related parties in a foreign nations. They have this transfer pricing agreements or APA agreements to guide the price, how they set the price before there's intra-company transfer, right? So they have to follow certain tax standards, and the tax standards have different tax. You can there is a range where you can set your price. So that's and as long as it's recognizable by the IRS or the tax regulation, it's okay. But a CBP has different sets of rules, which we call circumstance of sale, to review that price to see if that set price is acceptable from a CBP's perspective. So that test is circumstance of sale test. So what we see a lot of companies is if they have existing transfer pricing agreements, what they can do to adjust the price in a way that can still meet the circumstance of sale test, but can help them to reduce further duties. So that's something we see companies are doing, but it's a very complex concept, which definitely requires a separate, their own podcast. We can talk about it.
So,
Yeah, but that's some things we can do. A lot of companies are doing. But that's not the only thing, Bob. There are a lot of other things company can do.
okay.
I don't know if that's your second question.
Yeah, I was going to leave you the whole, what are some key operative word legitimate ways that importers can reduce these customs value without what I just said, triggering
Exactly.
claims with CBP.
That's I think the first thing what you should do is look at your current pricing structure and what's going into that declared value. If there are any components, you can take them out from the dutiable values, right? First of all, there are a lot of things that are not dutiable to begin with. International freight, international insurance. A lot of times the discounts that you set with your supplier prior to the importation are also not dutiable. And a lot of company, the engineer service maybe are built into the invoice, and maybe you can look at that, see if some parts of this engineer service can be billed separately, and if can see if that in that cost, if there are any parts are not dutiable. So you need to look at what you are declaring right now, and to see if you have done your homework, make sure that you're declaring the right optimal value, right, for your goods.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this next question I have for you. But I've been on several calls with this. How can deferral and recovery mechanisms, like let's talk about an FTZ, bonded warehouses, and drawback be part of the long-term duty savings strategy? This is huge.
Absolutely. So we talked about the duties calculation. What we're going to talk about is how to deferral the duty payment, and or how we can avoid the duty payment, and also how can we recover the duty. So foreign trade zones as well as bonded warehouse, these are traditionally due to deferral program, which is you are not paying the duty at the time of import, at the time of you bring the goods into the States. Instead, you pay the duties at a later time when you withdraw the goods from the bonded facility for consumption. So that's the concept. If you are later export the goods out of the United States, you don't need to pay duties at all. So that's duty avoidance. They have different nuances, and there are different things the different opportunities for bonded warehouse and foreign trade zones. I want to also give you an example. So these days, excuse me, there were a lot of changes with the goods from China.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, what they're doing, they see, hey, maybe we can put our goods in the bonded warehouse and see we can withdraw the goods at a favorable rate because there were a lot of changes, right? That is definitely something you can do. But the caveat here is you can only put your goods in bonded warehouse for up to 5 years.
Yeah.
And duty drawbacks. Duty drawbacks is a duty recovery program that allows importers to recover up to 99% of the duties paid for the goods that they later exported out of the United States. They have different types of duty drawback you can use: unused duty drawback, direct ID, and rejected retail returns. There are different types of duty drawbacks you can utilize, but you will need to talk to expert like us, we can help you to evaluate whether there is a feasibility, there is an opportunity here. It's also another very complex legal framework, and so there were a lot of homework you need to do beforehand. A lot of like what we say, the foreign trade zones, bonded warehouse, and duty drawbacks. Those programs are perfectly utilized for a company that have a very complex supply chains because they require an upfront setup. They require some investment upfront, and also they would require some resource to delegate it to the program to later support the programs.
Gotcha. Well, speaking of that, not that Carrie doesn't really know her stuff on FTZs, but I gotta put a plug in for got an FTZ guru.
Supply chain pro, yeah.
Well, Robert Stein he's VP on the consulting side of the house, and we've been doing feasibility studies and helping people get into these FTZs. I don't know, heavily, I would say, in the last 6 months, with a lot of questions that have come up on this is, how can I make this work for me? So check it out. I just did a podcast with Robert on this about a week ago, which was published. So you'll find it out there on YouTube and on our website.
One last thing I want to emphasize here is this strategies we're talking about in this and also the earlier podcast is those are very specific.
Yeah.
You need to talk to someone to see if you're really suitable for those strategies. You cannot just to go ahead and start using them right away, right? They can be very strong, but you have to have a structure and a resource and documentation to support all the strategies when an inquiry arises or when an audit happens. So you just have to make sure you maintain a perfect record keeping. You have to exercise the reasonable care. That's we have talked about multiple times. So you have to make sure you use them in a compliant and efficient way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the last thing I want to comment.
No, that's a great need to know.
Yeah, especially we do see because of this tariffs, all the changes, we do see uphike in the enforcement actions from the CBP. We would naturally, when these high tariffs occur, importers would want to dodge the tariffs. So we would also anticipate to see explosion of frauds coming. But you just need to do your homework. Make sure you have things to hold up when you use the strategies. And I want to have one last thing I want to say. Yeah, in Chinese, I also heard it from another conference I went to. Is we have this Chinese word called 危机. So basically, it's direct translate to crisis, but it's made of two Chinese words. Wei is danger. Ji is opportunity. What I'm saying is when there is danger, it also presents an opportunity at the same time. That's just a traditional, that's just some Chinese philosophy there. So, this also can be an opportunity for you guys.
Just did a video on it. From chaos comes opportunity. Same thing, Kerry. All right. We are out of time, but we appreciate you stopping by, and we'll see you on down the road. Thanks.